All right, now let's go back. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to think about where these thumbs up and thumbs down, where they link to, right? So right now, they're not linking anywhere. Like, they're basically empty links. So if I go click on it, if I click on this, nothing happens, stays on the same page. If I click on the down button, the thumbs down, same thing, nothing happens. So whenever we want it to go somewhere, we have to think about routes and actions, right? So let's go ahead and go to our routes file and think about how to create a route for the voting, okay? So if you go to, actually, I'm gonna close out some of these, which I don't need. Don't need any of these. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the routes file. All right, so what kind of route do I want to create over here? So I want something like this. I want a route that goes to recipes, and then let's say a particular recipe, and then like. Okay, so how do we build a route like this? We do that. First thing we want is we want it to be under recipes, so that a nested route basically, right? So we do that under recipes here, resources, recipes. Enter in a block, a do and end. Within here, we do something like this. Member do end. And then here we can specify the HTTP verb. So we want a post, right? There's get post. So we want a post and we want it to go to like. Okay, so what did that do? So let's see what route that created. If I go back to my terminal and type in rake routes, but I only want to see routes associated with like. So rake routes, the way you do that is space, then this, and then grep like. Okay, so there it is. So there's the verb post. There's the path that it created for us. So like underscore recipe, so would refer to it as like underscore recipe underscore path. Then the recipes, then we get the ID and the like. So it'll take a recipes object and associate the like with that, and then it'll point to the recipes controller like action. So sometimes you'll get memory usage warnings like that in Cloud9 environment. Just click on resize and then cancel it because as you can see on top here, it shows you the disk usage and then the memory usage. The memory, it's not close to, you know, being over, so it's fine. You can just ignore that. Okay, so let's go back to our route. So at this point, we want to pass in this link, right? This link like recipe path from the user interface. So let's go ahead and do that. Back to our show.html.erb file. And this is where we're going to add the link, which is where right down here for the thumbs up and the thumbs down. Okay, so let's see what we do here. All right, here's our link. Now we want to enter in like recipe, and I'm getting that from here. So like recipe path, and I need to pass in the recipe object that I'm going to create this vote or this like for. So it's right here, it takes that ID, so I have to pass in the object. And I also have to give it a method of post. Okay. Now, why am I doing that? Because by default, when I click that link, it's going to go to a GET, okay, HTTP GET request. And if you remember from the routes, we said to look for a post to like action, right? So we need to specify that we want it to be a post action. So let's go back, and you do that by in this way. You basically say, comma, method post. Okay? So we're going to do that down here also. So like recipe path, and then method post. All right. And let's see what that does. If we go back to our recipe, reload the page. Okay, now if I hover over this, see at the bottom left, you can see the link it's going to, and it says recipes/5/like. That's exactly the route that we wanted. Look here, same thing. But we need to figure out a way to differentiate between these two, right? Because right now, if I click here, it's just going to be a post request to like. And then it says the action like could not be found for recipes controller. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this like action in the recipe controller. So go to recipe controller. Then at the bottom here, over the private method, so define like, whoops, and then end. Now I want to see what parameters are being passed in, so I can do something like this, binding pry. So now if I go back there, then click here, go back to our app, to my server, which is here. If I type in params, I see that I have the action like, controller recipes, ID, which is the recipe ID of 5. Now what's missing is, I don't know if this is a thumbs up or a thumbs down, right? So I don't know if it's a true or a false for our like attribute. So I have to pass that in a parameter somehow. How do I do that? I can do that simply over here. If I can do this. So like true. And if I do that, it'll basically send this in the params hash also. Okay, so let's try that out. Actually, I need to exit out of my pry here. Okay. And then similarly, for the thumbs down, I want to set the like to false. All right. So let's try that. So now notice when I hover over this, you're getting the key of like and value equals true, and then key of like and value equals false when I hover over the thumbs down. Okay, that's exactly the route we're looking for. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, go to the recipes controller, and I want to get rid of the binding pry and actually create the like action. So I have to grab the recipe first. So recipe equals recipe.find, and I can find it by the params ID. Remember, the recipe object's being passed in, so I can basically grab the ID from there. thumbs ID, and then I can create like dot create, and then like params like, which was the key. If you remember, if I go back here, when I hover over this, so like at the bottom is the key and true is the value, okay? So I can get that true value and set this like to true by doing this params like. And then I also want to set the chef. And now we're gonna hard code this right now. Chef.first. And then recipe, we're going to say is the recipe. Now we're hard coding chef at this time because we don't have user authentication as yet. Once we do, we're just going to assign it to the current user. Okay, till then we're gonna keep it hard coded. All right, and then the recipe is the recipe object that we passed in. So once this is done, we want to give it some sort of flash message. So let's go flash, and then success. Your selection was successful. Okay. So let's, and we also want to redirect, right? We don't want to redirect to the index page here or the show page, because we're going to have this like, thumbs up and thumbs down option in both the show page and the index page. And after the action is done, meaning after a user clicks on like or dislike, we want the user to stay in that page where they made the selection from, instead of sending them to the index page all the time or the show page all the time. So how do we do that? There's an easy way to do that. So redirect to, and then colon back. This will basically send the user back to wherever they made the request from. Okay, so let's see what this did. I'll go to the show recipe page and then reload it. All right, and then let me click on this. Great, your selection was successful. Perfect. If I click on the down, thumbs down, okay, that's working also. Perfect. All right, so I want to add this piece of code to the index.html page also, right? So that people can vote from the index page, but they can also vote from the show recipe page. But before we do that, we have this thumbs up and thumbs down for recipes, but we're not showing how many likes and how many dislikes are for each recipe, right? So we want to say how many thumbs up or how many thumbs down each recipe got, and we want to display it over here. So how do we do that? So this is going to be a calculation, right? So if there is some kind of calculation and it's associated with this recipe, we want to add this method in the model itself. So we're going to add this to the recipe model, okay? And again, we're doing this because this is going to be a calculation. We want to associate the calculation at the model layer.